So, what I have here is two strum sticks that I've just completed, and they are fairly similar in construction as far as choice of woods go. There are some differences, and you could probably tell as well that there are some tonal differences as well. Some of them which I'm not entirely sure about, but that's woodworking for you. You can't quite predict what's going to happen. The most obvious difference when you look like this is that this one here has a side port, whereas this one doesn't, and this one has a slightly thicker body. As far as the materials go, they are both made out of elm wood back and sides, which is fantastic wood to work with. I've never used it before. It bends really easily and it's really easy to work with. Smells quite nice as well, which is always a bonus. This elm was a log that I was given 3 years ago, and I split, and then it's been drying, and then last year I split it again into more manageable pieces, and it's been dried finally. So I decided it was finally time to actually do something with it. Both of them have spruce tops, birch neck, and the difference also is the fingerboards, whereas this one has an oak fingerboard, this one has a birch fingerboard. All other differences are purely cosmetic. You can see this one has not really a rope pattern, it's more of a checkboard pattern. And yes, I did inlay every single little one at a time by hand. So yeah, slightly bonkers. You might also see that I got my center lines on this one slightly off, sadly, but you know, it doesn't affect playability or anything. Both of them have a black plastic binding as well. This one has a slightly simpler rosette. So it's this master birch, birch if you want, with a black plastic binding on it there. And this one is the one that you probably experience to be slightly louder and fuller in sound. And that was sort of my initial response, but after playing them I must say I actually prefer this one. It has slightly more of an open sound. It's kind of hard to put your finger on. It sounds more folky, I suppose, even if this one probably has a little more overtone rich sounds to it. And this is nice and fancy, but I found that this is the more interesting one as well, especially with the side port. What the side port does is that it actually projects the sound towards you while you're playing. It also means you get a bit more of an open sound because you got two sound holes basically. So it's just the combined space is a much larger sound hole than the other one. Why would you want a side port? Well, if you're just playing on your own, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. If you are playing with, say, guitar or ukulele or someone else, it really helps you hear what's going on. So that's the great advantage of it. And it does also mean that you get a slightly more open sound. So if I put my hand on the hole, it gets a slightly more, little more bass or mid-range as it will be in these instruments. Not that hard to make a side port. You should just make a hole of your choice in the side. What you have to think about is that because the wood is actually bending here, it will want to tear the grain. So there is support on the inside here, running up either side, and then of course the binding there to keep it all together. This one also has a slightly heavier bracing, which probably also adds to the sound. My sort of plan for these two instruments was that I was going to keep one of them, and the other one is going to a friend of mine, and I think this one is the one that's going. So I in usual manner don't want to keep the best one for myself. It's not quite as kind-hearted as it might sound. It's a little bit of an egotistical thing as well. First of all, I want the person to have the best one, so they sort of think it's good. And secondly, I want it to challenge me to have to build another one. So it's a sort of way for me to try and improve. Before that happens, I'm going to jot down all the measurements and see if I can reproduce it. Now, like I said, I prefer this one, but it does have more open sound, but it is the depth of the body. This one is just perfect as far as ergonomics go. It's very comfortable to play. This one is just a tiny little bit too deep, so it just doesn't feel quite right. What I also did different was that this one has quite a pronounced V-shaped neck, whereas this one is more of a sort of traditional C shape. Doesn't actually make that much of a difference, I noticed, as far as playing. What's slightly unique with these two as well is that both of them, it's going to be hard to show there, both of them have a radiused fretboard, 12-inch fretboard, which is not normally done on sort of Dulcimer style instruments. And the question, of course, is, does it make any difference at all? And it does make a tiny bit of a difference. The difference being really, just like a guitar or any other instrument, is when you do with the bar chords. But even playing like that, it just feels slightly less like a plank of wood and more something that's more ergonomic, even if it's a tiny difference. So it's really a question if it's worth the time putting in a radius fretboard, but I wanted to try it anyway. So sound of two stick dulcimers and a few of my ramblings about them. So, thanks for watching. Take care now. Bye bye.